The Forgotten Melody. Chapter 1. The Old Record Store. The town of Maplewood was the kind of place where time seemed to move slower. Nestled in the heart of the Midwest, it was a patchwork of quiet streets, old brick buildings, and friendly faces. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. But one place in Maplewood held more secrets than most: Harmony Records. The record store had been a fixture on Main Street for as long as anyone could remember. Its windows were perpetually dusty, and the sign above the door was faded from decades of sun and rain. Inside, the air smelled of old wood, aging paper, and the faintest hint of vanilla, Walter Monroe's preferred incense. Walter, the owner, was a man in his late 60s with a deep love for music. He had turned Harmony Records into a sanctuary for vinyl enthusiasts, a place where the crackle of a needle on a record was more than just sound, it was history. The walls were lined with shelves of albums, from the Beatles to Led Zeppelin, from Aretha Franklin to Bruce Springsteen. Here, the past was always present. On this particular rainy afternoon, the store was empty except for Walter. He was seated behind the counter, polishing an old Fleetwood Mac record while the radio played softly in the background. The rain tapped gently against the windows, creating a soothing rhythm that Walter found comforting. Just as he was about to flip the record, the bell above the door jingled. A woman stepped inside, shaking the rain from her coat. She was in her early 50s, with graying hair and a face that spoke of both kindness and weariness. She carried a large tote bag, its contents hidden beneath a layer of fabric. Walter looked up and smiled. "Afternoon. Can I help you find something?" The woman hesitated, her eyes scanning the store as if searching for something specific. "I'm looking for a song," she said finally. "It's called The Forgotten Melody." Walter frowned. He prided himself on knowing every track in his store, but this one didn't ring a bell. "The Forgotten Melody," he repeated. "Who's the artist?" "That's the thing," the woman replied, stepping closer to the counter. "I don't know. I've been searching for years, online, in libraries, even old radio archives, but it's like it never existed." Walter leaned forward, intrigued. "Tell me more. What does it sound like?" The woman, her name was Eleanor, paused, as if trying to find the right words. "It's haunting. A piano melody, simple but beautiful. I heard it once long ago on a road trip with my late husband. We were driving through the Rockies, and it came on the radio. Neither of us had heard it before, but it moved us both to tears. After that, we never heard it again." Walter listened intently, his curiosity piqued. "And you've been looking for it ever since?" Eleanor nodded. "It's become something of a mission. My husband passed away 5 years ago, and finding this song feels like a way to keep him close." Walter's heart ached at her words. He had always believed in the power of music, how it could connect people, evoke emotions, and preserve memories. But this was something deeper, more personal. "Let me see what I can do," he said, rising from his chair. For the next hour, Walter and Eleanor combed through the store's collection, searching for any trace of the elusive song. They flipped through stacks of records, scanned old playlists, and even dug through Walter's personal notes. But try as they might, they found nothing. As the rain continued to fall outside, Eleanor sank into a chair, looking defeated. "It's like it's just gone," she whispered. Walter sat down across from her, his mind racing. "There's one more thing we could try," he said slowly. "An old friend of mine, Jack, used to work at a radio station back in the 70s. If anyone knows about obscure tracks, it's him." Eleanor's eyes lit up with hope. "Do you think he could help?" "I'll call him tonight," Walter promised. As Eleanor left the store, Walter couldn't shake the feeling that this was the start of something bigger, a forgotten melody, a long-lost song. It was a mystery that resonated with something deep inside him. Chapter 2: The Radio DJ. Walter Monroe sat in the dimly lit back room of Harmony Records, the phone pressed to his ear. Outside, the rain had subsided, leaving the streets slick and reflective under the glow of the streetlights. Walter had spent the better part of the evening trying to track down his old friend, Jack Thompson. Jack had been a DJ at WKLP, a local radio station, back in the 70s and 80s. If anyone knew about obscure songs, it was Jack. Finally, on the third try, the line connected. "Jack, it's Walter. Walter Monroe." "Walter!" Jack's voice boomed through the receiver, warm and familiar. "It's been years. How's the record store treating you?" "It's still standing," Walter replied with a chuckle. "Listen, I need your help with something. A woman came into the shop today looking for a song. She called it The Forgotten Melody. Ring any bells?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "The Forgotten Melody," Jack repeated slowly. "You know, that sounds familiar. Give me a second." Walter heard the sound of paper shuffling, and then Jack's voice returned, lower this time. "Are you sitting down?" Walter frowned. "Why?" "Because I think I know what you're talking about. It's not just a song, Walter. It's a legend." Walter leaned forward, his heart racing. "What do you mean?" "Back in the 70s and 80s, there was a rumor about a track that was never officially released. It was recorded by a small-time artist who died shortly after. The song was hauntingly beautiful, but it disappeared before it could be distributed. Some people claim to have heard it on the radio, but no one could ever prove it existed." "Do you have a copy?" Walter asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I wish I did. But here's the thing. I think I know someone who might. His name's Henry, an old sound engineer who worked at the station. If anyone kept records of everything back then, it's him. I'll call him in the morning and let you know." Walter thanked Jack and hung up, his mind swirling with possibilities. The next day, he shared the news with Eleanor, who listened with wide eyes. "We're getting closer," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. A few days later, Walter received another call from Jack. "Got some news for you," Jack said. "Henry remembers the song. He says he might have an old tape somewhere in his attic, but it's going to take some digging." "That's incredible!" Walter exclaimed. "It's a long shot," Jack warned, "but I'll let you know if we find anything." Meanwhile, Walter and Eleanor began researching the mysterious artist behind the song. They scoured old music magazines, reached out to collectors, and even visited local archives. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. They learned that the artist's name was Samuel Harris, a talented pianist who had lived in Maplewood briefly in the 70s and 80s. He had recorded a demo of The Forgotten Melody, but passed away in a car accident before it could be released. As the days turned into weeks, Walter and Eleanor's search became more intense. They spent hours in the record store, mapping out leads and discussing theories. Along the way, they discovered a shared love of music and began to unravel the stories of their own lives. Eleanor told Walter about her late husband, a musician who encouraged her to chase her dreams. Walter, in turn, shared memories of his younger days when music had been his escape from the world. One evening, as the two sat in the back room, Eleanor turned to Walter with a smile. "Thank you," she said softly, "for helping me with this. It means more than you know." Walter smiled back. "We're not done yet," he said. "We'll find that song, I promise." Chapter 3: The Attic Discovery. The week that followed Jack's phone call felt like an eternity to Walter and Eleanor. Every day they checked in with Jack, hoping for news about the tape. Finally, on a crisp autumn morning, Jack called with an update. "We found it,"
he said, his voice crackling with excitement. Henry spent days digging through his attic, but he finally unearthed an old box of tapes. One of them is labeled S. Harris, Forgotten Melody. Walter's heart skipped a beat. That's it. That has to be it. He's willing to let you listen to it, Jack continued. But there's a catch. The tape is brittle, and it's been decades since anyone has played it. You'll need to be careful. Walter assured Jack they would handle it with care and arranged for a visit to Henry's house the following day. When Walter told Eleanor the news, she was overcome with emotion. Tears welled up in her eyes as she clasped her hands together. "I can't believe it," she whispered. "After all those years." The next day, Walter and Eleanor drove to Henry's house on the outskirts of Maplewood. Henry, a wiry man in his late 70s, greeted them at the door with a warm smile. "You must be Walter and Eleanor," he said, ushering them inside. Come in, come in. The tape's waiting for you." The house was cluttered with memorabilia from Henry's days as a sound engineer. Old microphones, reel-to-reel machines, and shelves stacked with tapes and records. He led them to a small room in the back where a vintage tape player sat on a wooden table. "This is it," he said, gesturing to the tape. "I haven't played it yet. Thought you'd want to be the first to hear it." Eleanor's hands trembled as she picked up the tape. The label was faded but still legible. S. Harris, Forgotten Melody. Walter helped her load the tape into the player, and they all sat down, their hearts pounding in anticipation. Henry pressed play. At first there was only static, a hiss that filled the room. Then, slowly, a soft piano melody began to emerge. It was hauntingly beautiful, just as Eleanor had described. The notes were simple, yet deeply emotive, weaving a story of love, loss, and longing. Eleanor closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "It's the same song," she whispered, "the one I heard all those years ago." As the melody played, Walter felt a lump in his throat. There was something about the music that felt timeless, as if it carried the weight of countless untold stories. When the song ended, the room fell silent. For a moment, no one spoke. "That was incredible," Walter said. "It's a shame it was never released. Samuel Harris was a genius." Eleanor wiped her tears and turned to Henry. "Thank you," she said earnestly, "for preserving this. It means the world to me." Henry smiled. "I'm just glad it found its way to you." As they left Henry's house, Eleanor clutched a digital copy of the tape, her expression a mix of joy and relief. But the journey wasn't over yet. "We need to share this," she said to Walter as they drove back to Maplewood. "People should hear it." Walter agreed. Together they decided to digitize the song and release it to the world. They reached out to Jack, who helped them connect with a small record label that specialized in reviving lost music. But as they worked on the release, Walter couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. He felt a strange connection to Samuel Harris, as if their lives were somehow intertwined. One evening, while researching Harris's life, Walter stumbled upon an old newspaper article from 1974. It was about a car accident that claimed the life of Samuel Harris and his wife. A single sentence caught Walter's eye. "Harris is survived by his infant daughter, who was not in the car at the time of the accident." Walter's breath caught in his throat. He quickly searched for more information but found nothing. The daughter's name was never mentioned, and there was no record of what had happened to her. When Walter shared the discovery with Eleanor, she looked thoughtful. "What if she's still out there?" she asked. "What if she doesn't even know about her father's music?" Walter nodded. "We need to find her." Chapter 4. The Search for the Daughter. With the discovery of Samuel Harris's possible daughter, Walter and Eleanor's mission took on a new dimension. The song, The Forgotten Melody, was no longer just a piece of music. It was a connection to a family's lost history. They began their search by visiting the local library and combing through old birth records. After hours of searching, they found a single entry: Harris, Samuel, and Margaret, daughter, Elizabeth, born March 15, 1974. Elizabeth Harris, Eleanor said, staring at the record. If she's still alive, she'd be in her late 40s now. Walter nodded. But where would she be, and why is there no trace of her after the accident? Their next stop was the Maplewood Historical Society. There they met with an elderly volunteer named Marge, who had lived in the town her entire life. "Samuel Harris?" Marge repeated thoughtfully. "I remember him. He was a quiet man, always working on his music. After the accident, the baby was taken in by relatives out of state. I think it was Margaret's sister." "Do you know which state?" Eleanor asked. Marge shook her head. "I'm afraid not, but I do remember someone saying it was somewhere up north. Maine, maybe." Armed with this new information, Walter and Eleanor returned to the record store and began searching online for Elizabeth Harris in Maine. They scrolled through dozens of names, but none seemed to match. What if she changed her name? Eleanor wondered aloud. Maybe she was adopted. It was a possibility they hadn't considered. Without a last name or any other details, their search hit a dead end. A few days later, as Walter was organizing a shipment of records, the bell above the door jingled. He looked up to see a woman in her late 40s standing in the doorway. She had dark hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Welcome to Harmony Records," Walter said, walking over. "Can I help you find something?" The woman hesitated, then spoke. "My name's Elizabeth. I heard you're looking for me." Walter's heart skipped a beat. "Elizabeth Harris?" She nodded. "A friend of mine in Maine told me someone was asking about me. I thought I'd come see what this was all about." For a moment, Walter was speechless. Then he called out to Eleanor, who was in the back room. "Eleanor, she's here!" Eleanor rushed out, her eyes widening as she saw Elizabeth. "You're Samuel Harris's daughter," she said, her voice filled with awe. Elizabeth looked surprised. "How do you know my father? He died when I was just a baby." Walter motioned for her to sit down. "It's a long story," he said. As they sat in the back room, Walter and Eleanor told Elizabeth everything: how Eleanor had heard the forgotten melody on a road trip with her late husband, how they had tracked down the tape, and how they had learned about her existence. When they played the song for her, Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "My father, he made this?" Walter nodded. "And now it's yours." Elizabeth took a deep breath, trying to process everything. "I never knew much about him," she admitted. "My aunt raised me, and she didn't like talking about the past. All I have is this." She reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a young couple, Samuel and Margaret Harris, holding a baby. "That's you," Walter said softly. Elizabeth smiled through her tears. "It is. And now, thanks to you, I have a piece of him I never knew existed." As the days passed, Elizabeth became a regular visitor at Harmony Records. Together, she, Walter, and Eleanor worked on digitizing and releasing The Forgotten Melody. They decided to dedicate the release to Samuel and Margaret Harris as a tribute to their legacy. But as they prepared the final details, Walter couldn't shake a lingering thought. He pulled Eleanor aside one evening. "Do you think this is what Samuel would have wanted, his music shared with the world?" Eleanor thought for a moment. "I think he would have wanted his family to be remembered. And this song, it's a part of him." Walter nodded, reassured. Chapter 5. The Legacy Lives On. The release of The Forgotten Melody was nothing short of a phenomenon. The haunting piano piece struck a chord with listeners worldwide, capturing hearts and sparking conversations about lost art and untold stories. Music critics praised Samuel Harris's genius, calling the song a masterpiece of raw emotion. For Walter, Eleanor, and Elizabeth, the response was overwhelming but deeply rewarding. They had not only uncovered a lost gem, but also reconnected Elizabeth with her father's legacy. A few weeks after the release, the three of them gathered at Harmony Records for a small celebration. Elizabeth brought a framed copy of the photograph of her parents, which she intended to hang in the store. "This feels like the perfect place for it," she said, holding the photo up to the wall. "It's where the everything started." Walter smiled. "It's where the melody found its way back to us." As they toasted with sparkling cider, Eleanor turned to Elizabeth. "Have you thought about what's next? For you, I mean?" Elizabeth sighed, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking a lot about my father's music. I never knew he was a musician, but now I feel like I want to honor his work in some way." "Like how?" Walter asked. "I've been learning to play the piano. It's a little late to start, I know, but I want to connect with my father through his craft." "It's never too late," Eleanor said warmly, "and you've already got his talent in your blood." Walter nodded in agreement. "Maybe one day you'll create your own melody." Elizabeth smiled, a spark of determination in her eyes. "Maybe I will." In the months that followed, Elizabeth's piano skills improved steadily. She began composing her own music, drawing inspiration from her father's work. Meanwhile, Walter and Eleanor continued to run Harmony Records, which had become a hub for music lovers and storytellers alike. One evening, as Walter was closing up the store, Eleanor walked in with a small box. "What's this?" Walter asked, curious. Eleanor handed it to him. "Open it." Inside was a vinyl record. The label read, "Elizabeth Harris, New Beginnings." Walter's eyes widened. "She finished it." Eleanor nodded. "She wanted you to be the first to hear it." Walter carefully placed the record on the player, and the soft, melodic strains of Elizabeth's music filled the room. It was a blend of her father's haunting style and her own unique voice, a testament to the bond they shared even across time. "She's amazing," Walter said, his voice filled with awe. Eleanor smiled. "Just like her father." As the year drew to a close, the three of them stood outside Harmony Records, watching the snow fall gently on Main Street. The store's lights twinkled in the evening darkness, a beacon of warmth and nostalgia. "I can't believe how far we've come," Elizabeth said, her breath visible in the cold air. "It's been quite a journey," Walter agreed. Eleanor looked at them both, her eyes filled with gratitude. "And it's not over yet. There are still so many stories to uncover, so many melodies to find." Walter nodded, his gaze lingering on the store's faded sign. "The music never really ends, does it?" "No," Elizabeth said softly. "It lives on, through us." Epilogue. Years later, Harmony Records remains a beloved fixture in Maplewood. Walter, now in his 70s, continues to run the store with the help of Elizabeth, who has become his partner in preserving the past. Eleanor, though retired, visits often, always bringing new ideas and stories. Together, they've turned Harmony Records into more than just a record store. It's a living archive of memories, a place where lost melodies are found and new ones are born. And sometimes, when the store is quiet and the air is still, Walter swears he can hear the faint notes of the forgotten melody, a gentle reminder that the past is always with us, waiting to be rediscovered. The end.